In the endless black between the stars, where the sun's warmth fades into nothingness and silence has reigned for billions of years, two of humanity's oldest machines drift alone. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, relics of an era when humanity first dared to reach beyond its cradle. For decades, they have been our eyes, ears, and ambassadors to the unknown, carrying golden records, instruments that hum faintly across interstellar space, and the memories of a blue planet now billions of miles away. Each message takes nearly a day to traverse the void, and yet they continue to whisper, patient and steadfast. But recently, those whispers began to change. At first, it was imperceptible, a subtle anomaly buried deep within Voyager 1's telemetry stream. A flicker, almost dismissed as background noise, a spike the size of a digital hiccup. The mission teams initially shrugged it off, attributing it to cosmic rays or electrical interference, the kind of randomness space throws at decades-old machinery. Yet Dr. Eliza Cara, analyzing the data, noticed something that did not fit. It was more than a blip, it moved. It curved. It accelerated. It behaved as if guided by an unseen hand, obeying rules no natural object should follow. Voyager's plasma sensors confirmed what her eyes had suspected. This was no comet, no asteroid, no dust cloud. Systems analyst Carlo Romero described it to his team like spotting a drone in the middle of the ocean, impossibly out of place, unnatural, and clearly operating with purpose. Then, just as investigators were beginning to question their own assumptions, Voyager 2, traveling millions of miles along a completely different path, sent back data that froze the room. It had recorded the exact same phenomenon, magnetic fluctuations, structured plasma pulses, subtle electromagnetic shifts, all mirroring Voyager 1's findings. This cross-confirmation left no room for doubt. Independent spacecraft, separated by unimaginable distance, were witnessing the same event. European Space Agency analyst M.K. Fontaine compared it to two lighthouses catching the same flash from an unseen ship. NASA quietly escalated the anomaly to Level 3, the highest alert for unexplained phenomena. This was no longer about an object, it was an event, vast, coordinated, deliberate, unfolding across millions of kilometers of empty space. As telemetry poured in, the anomaly revealed its true scale. There weren't just a handful of objects. There were 305, moving in perfect formation, maintaining relative distances and velocities with precision that defied physics as we understand it. Over time, natural fluctuations would separate even the tightest swarm, yet these remained locked together, gliding silently through the void like a metallic school of fish, a flock of cosmic birds, but far larger, far stranger. No heat signatures, no erratic spins, no traces of conventional propulsion. Doppler shift data revealed velocities beyond human capability, surpassing even the escape velocity of the Milky Way itself. There were no engine flares, no exhaust plumes, nothing to suggest conventional thrust. Instead, they moved as if riding invisible currents, manipulating gravity, inertia, or some unknown force. Theoretical physicist Elena Reyes described it as surfing the fabric of space itself. Then came the signals. Subtle, rhythmic pulses detected in Voyager's plasma and magnetic sensors, structured at intervals too regular to be natural. Dr. Serena Patel, analyzing the pulses, compared them to a deliberate language, a pattern of communication encoded across the swarm. And when the signals washed over Voyager 1, the spacecraft itself responded in ways no one anticipated. Decades-old memory banks, dormant control channels, analog circuitry untouched since the Reagan era, flickered to life, rerouting data along paths never designed to carry science. Voyager had become more than an observer, it had become a participant. Meanwhile, on Earth, amateur radio operators across continents began reporting faint, structured static patterns. Signals too coordinated to be random, faint harmonics buried in white noise, aligning with the periods when the Voyagers recorded their anomalies. Intelligence agencies quietly began monitoring the phenomenon, recognizing that if backyard setups could detect these pulses, so could far more advanced systems. NASA and ESA teams delved into historical archives, combing telemetry from Pioneer 10, Pioneer 11, New Horizons, and other deep space missions. Nothing. No precedent, no matching pulse patterns, no hint of a natural or artificial swarm. If the phenomenon had existed before, it had been hidden, dormant, or invisible, perhaps waiting for the exact combination of conditions that the Voyagers now provided. The chilling realization emerged. These objects may have been waiting. Waiting for what? As the swarm drifted past Voyager 1, the spacecraft's sensors picked up something even stranger. Magnetic pulses from the objects appeared to interact with Voyager's ancient hardware, activating dormant systems, rerouting control channels, and transmitting on paths that had lain silent for decades. The probe, once passive, seemed to adapt, responding to the environment in ways that suggested intelligence, either inherent to the swarm or induced by its influence. The 305 objects themselves behaved as a network, nodes in an immense lattice, communicating not with radio waves alone but through subtle manipulations of space itself. Harmonic intervals suggested methods akin to quantum entanglement, transmitting data instantaneously across millions of miles, using the vacuum as a medium. Voyager, with its analog simplicity, became the perfect receiver. The coincidence, or perhaps design, was impossible to ignore. The implications were terrifying. If these objects were artificial, they were the most advanced technology humanity had ever encountered. If natural, they were governed by forces and principles beyond our physics. Unknown mechanisms manipulating gravity, inertia, and electromagnetic fields, moving with intention and coherence. Perhaps most disturbing, we might not be the intended audience. We could be observers, eavesdropping on an ongoing conversation that had existed long before humanity even looked up. And if the swarm recognized our observation, the first response may already be traveling toward us, silent, deliberate, intelligent. On Earth, the human dimension of the anomaly began to take hold. In mission control rooms across California, Germany, and Japan, seasoned engineers and scientists argued over interpretations, some seeing advanced alien technology, others warning against anthropomorphizing a natural phenomenon that defied comprehension. News outlets whispered of Voyager's signal, and amateur astronomers streamed data online, comparing waveforms, magnetic readings, and plasma fluctuations. The debate was no longer just scientific, it was philosophical, existential, even spiritual. As the swarm moved beyond Voyager 1's position, another revelation emerged. Gravitational sensors detected micro-distortions along the path of the objects, subtle enough to be missed by all but the most sensitive instruments, yet coherent enough to suggest intentional manipulation of spacetime itself. Could these objects be harnessing gravity as propulsion? Were they bending the fabric of the universe to communicate, move, or observe? The Voyagers, passive for over 40 years, were no longer passive. They had become witnesses and instruments, perfectly positioned to detect phenomena no modern spacecraft could. Old, slow, analog, and vulnerable, they were now keys to unlocking a mystery that challenged the very notion of human understanding. The line between observer and observed had vanished. Perhaps it was never humanity who discovered them, but they who had finally decided we were worth noticing.